In the distant future, a great war waged in the galaxy. The Sol Dominion was a ruthless empire that quickly rose in power and began a galactic assault, conquering nearby planets and raining their tyranny upon them. By the time the other galactic powers realized the gravity of the situation, most of them were overthrown or destroyed. What was left was the United Front. The remaining free powers in the universe came together and did everything they could to hold the Sol Dominion at bay. These were desperate times, and the United Front did everything they could to combat the enemy in what was being referred to as the Great War. But the way things were currently going, they knew they'd eventually fall like many others before them. They had to take a chance. The United Front sent a crew of their best men undercover into Sol Dominion's capital to gather intel. It was extremely risky, but they knew what had to be done. The men used a civilian vessel to pass into enemy territory, and after working undercover for weeks, they were successful in their mission. What they discovered was a valuable secret, the location to Sol Dominion's superweapon that allowed them to wreak havoc across the galaxy. Now, their only problem was escaping with that intel and returning back to the United Front's capital without being detected. Sol Dominion would quickly discover what these men did and go after them. Because of this, they couldn't continue to use their FTL drives, or Sol Dominion would quickly detect and catch up to their ship. For this reason, they jumped to the outer rim of the galaxy, where they could travel without threat of being detected. Because of these precautions, it would take longer for them to arrive at their destination. All that was left was to deliver this information back to the United Front safely.
Can someone explain to me how we got stuck with maintaining this bloody ship for the first shift of this voyage?
Come on, man, it's not too bad. It's already been a week. One more and we get to take a long nap while the others do their part. By the time we wake up, we'll be honored as heroes.
Civilian-class ship brings a whole lot less suspicion in the Sol Dominion capital, Totty. It's a long ride home. It'll be worth it once we get back safely.
I know that. I just wish this hunk of metal had a strong enough FTL drive to get us home in one jump.
Yeah, but that'd make this too easy. If we did another jump now, Sol Dominion would be able to track our heat signatures instantly. At least this way, our tracks are covered. Even if they follow our initial jump from the capital, we'll lose them out here on the rim.
Speaking of which, how are things looking up there?
All good right now. Well, we are getting an abnormal gravitational pull from this outer rim planet we're passing by. But once we get through, it'll be smooth sail. I might have spoken too soon.
Cardicate, what's going on? Why are the alarms going off?
The system's detected a really big object moving at a high velocity. We're directly in its path.
Sol Dominion?
No, it looks like a meteor. Guys, I don't know if I can get us out of the way because of the abnormal gravitational pull from this planet. We're gonna have to make another jump.
You know we can't do that. If we do, we're as good as dead anyway. You need to get us out of the way.
There's not enough time. I don't know if I can pull this off.
Man, prepare for an emergency evacuation, just in case. The cryosleep caskets double as escape pods for these kinds of situations.
The planetary pull's too strong. I can't move the ship enough. Prepare for imminent impact.
Get the data from Sol Dominion. Initiate an evacuation. Man, the data's been encrypted and uploaded to your transmitters. Now get to the escape pods.
What happened up there? Where is everyone?
The others made it to the escape hatch too. Did the ship get hit before they launched? And where are the rest of the men? The ship is supposed to launch them in an evacuation, right?
Calm down, Bish. I'm not sure what happened. Everything moved too quickly. The collision might have thrown off the coordinates of the other escape pods.
Well, at least the supply pod landed with us, so we aren't stranded with absolutely nothing. Glomus, we have a backup protocol for these situations, right?
We do. We need to find shelter and issue an encrypted distress signal. I hope we find the others, but we have work to do.
Guys, we have to get this data back to the capital. They need this, or the United Front will eventually fall to Sol Dominion.
Maybe we'll find the others, and locate another ship.
Maybe. It's hard to tell with these distant rim worlds. But for now, we need to focus on establishing a base of operations and figure out a plan on getting off this planet. We very well may be the last hope the United Front has for winning the Great War.
Hey guys, This is Eric with Pixel Rookie, and I want to welcome you to the beginning of my next Rimworld narrative series called The Last Hope. My first Rimworld series was purely vanilla, but this time it'll be a modded playthrough and I'll include the list of mods I used in the description of every episode. If you're new to my channel and aren't familiar with how my Rimworld narrative series works, I'll give you a quick breakdown. I call it my Randy Random Rough Commitment Run. It's a playthrough where I choose the crash-landed scenario, have Randy as the storyteller in the rough difficulty setting, and most importantly, it's set to commitment mode. The choices I make while playing are final. I can't reload any mistakes I make while this story unfolds. After that, we choose a world seed. The planet they landed on has the codename Blackjack. The entire theme of these playthroughs is that everything is selected randomly, so we'll choose a random landing site. It looks like their escape pods dropped in the middle of a tropical rainforest. All things considered, they got pretty lucky. And finally, we accept the first random characters that were given. Now, the major difference with this playthrough compared to my previous one is the additional context of the backstory. I wanted to add depth to the characters of this series by giving them a background story and personalities. These men have vital information that the United Front needs to have a chance against defeating the Soul Dominion, and they need to escape this Rimworld to deliver that data. Hundreds of thousands of lives depend on it. Now let's meet our men. Our first colonist is Ace. Even though he worked as a recruiter before he joined the United Front, Ace has always been gruff and tough. He rarely showed fear in the face of danger and preferred shooting first and asking questions later. Even with his tough demeanor, he always had a soft spot for helping others and he loved animals. Ace is resourceful and seen as a valuable asset, which is why he was selected to be part of the United Front's secret mission. The second colonist is Bish. He always had a passion for nature and was chosen for the United Front's mission to help maintain the ship and was in charge of growing the food supply so they wouldn't have to make many supply stops on the return trip. He knew how to treat almost any wound and worked directly under Glomus in the med bay. Everyone joked that Bish had a silver tongue and could talk his way out of almost any situation. His role was vital to help with the well-being of the crew and ship so that the men in the field could focus on the mission. And finally, we have Glomus. He was a geologist before the Great War, but he shifted his focus on treating others once the conflict began. He became a good enough doctor that he was the lead medic for the United Front's secret mission. Few men had the resolve that Glomus had. He normally kept his cool under pressure and always considered the best options in almost any scenario. He wasn't much for fighting, but he was wise and thoughtful. Out of the 3 survivors, he was the most senior ranking officer and took the initiative to lead the others. On their return journey, a majority of the crew slept in cryosleep caskets while the remaining men maintained the ship. They don't know what happened to the rest of the crew. Their cryosleep caskets should have deployed when they evacuated, but they were nowhere to be found. All they have is each other, a few emergency supplies, and somehow Totty's pet wolf, Gorda, who was found in one of the supply pods that landed with the men. They hope the others survived the crash, but for now, they have to assume that they're the only ones remaining who can deliver this critical intel back to the United Front. They'll do whatever's necessary to succeed in their mission. For all these men know, they're the last hope for the United Front. Oh, and one final note is that the characters in this playthrough are named after patrons. Keep in mind that I recorded this playthrough months ago and I can't take name requests moving forward. If you'd like to appear in a future series, please consider becoming a patron because I'll be naming characters after them in all future content as a reward for supporting my channel. Now that the stage is set and you know the rules, let's begin the next Randy Random's Rough Commitment Run. The men finished talking and knew it was time to get to work. They had a long day ahead of them. They did a quick tally of their supplies from the crash. They had enough rations for a few days, some medicine, a few weapons, and body armor. Ace was their best shot by a large margin, so he took the rifle while Bish took the revolver. Glomus was a skilled doctor, but he was definitely not cut out to be a fighter. They were surprised to see Gorda here with them, but it was nice to have a domesticated wolf companion. Ace was definitely the most capable fighter of the 3, and he volunteered to wear the body armor and defend the others if necessary. They weren't sure if there would be any hostiles nearby, and they wanted to be prepared, just in case. While he was equipping the gear, Bish and Glomus were surveying the surrounding area to see where they could find shelter for the coming days. They landed in the middle of a humid jungle surrounded by a vast mountain range. Ace finished suiting up and they concluded that they could mine into the mountains and use that as a base of operations, at least while they got more situated. If there were any hostiles in the surrounding area, having fortifications inside the mountain would provide an excellent defense. It also looked like there were some ruins of a small building nearby. They didn't want to be out in the open by nightfall. They could reconstruct these ruins as a short-term solution for the first few nights. Digging into the mountain and building their first shelter was plenty of work for them right now. Bish was sick from the turbulence from the crash landing and was throwing up while Glomus began working on the shelter. Ace also mentioned that he wasn't feeling well, but they had to push through it and keep working. They had to prepare for a potential longer-term solution, so once Bish regained his composure, he plotted out some growing areas. Fortunately, the planet was hospitable and the ground was fertile. They only had rations for a few days and it would be critical to start growing more food. And while Bish was the most experienced in agriculture, he lacked the knowledge of how to grow heelroot, which was a vital ingredient for making herbal medicine. For now, they would have to do their best to ration what little medicine they did have, and Bish would work on learning how to grow more as soon as possible. As the men continued to work on planting crops and preparing their shelter, they established an area to stockpile their supplies. There were plenty of trees in this jungle region, so they could use the wood to build up their shelter and construct basic furnishings. It was midday and they had the foundation of their shelter in place. They were building makeshift beds and finishing the construction of their temporary sleeping area by late afternoon. As Bish continued sowing seeds, Glomus finished their shelter and roofed it off. Right now, knowing they had a roof over their head for the night was the most they could ask for. They continued to work late into their first night stranded on this Rimworld and took some time to lay out plans for a base within the mountains. They plotted a layout for sleeping quarters, an individual room for each of them, a dining hall, a research room, a butcher room, kitchen, and freezer. It would take a lot of effort to mine this layout into the mountain, but they would slowly work at it. They wanted to stay close to their landing zone in case others survived the crash. Maybe they could track them here. They also planned to build out a storage area around their stockpiled goods. Their supplies wouldn't last long if they sat out in the open. It was a long and hard first day, but they finally went to sleep and tried to rest up the best they could. There was still so much to do. The sun started to rise, and even with the cool morning temperature, they could feel the sticky humidity creeping into their small sleeping shelter. Bish was the first awake. He quickly ate some food and went back to work. They needed more wood to build the walls of the storage area. Fortunately, they were surrounded by a lush tropical forest. The men planned to cut some of the trees to make a clearing around their base of operations while building up their supply of wood to use. Ace and Glomus were quite efficient for just 2 men. They built up the walls while Bish continued focusing on sowing seeds for when they ran out of their emergency rations. The storage room was finally finished and they were able to roof it off, protecting their supplies from the elements. It was only midday, but they were making good progress. Digging out a tunnel in the mountains with simple tools from their supply pod was hard work. Glomus didn't mind though. In his past life, he was a geologist and had a lot of experience with dig sites and mining. Bish finished seeding all their farm plots and joined the men in the tunnel they were digging out. They were going to need to begin researching better tech if they wanted to survive and get off this planet. For now, they'd built a research bench in the storage room while they continued to mine out their base. Ace told the others that he was feeling even worse than he was yesterday. They figured it was the fatigue of working so hard, but they realized it was much worse than that. Through the harsh jungle environment, Ace contracted malaria. He left the freshly dug tunnel and immediately went back to his bed to rest. He felt horrible. Glomus followed shortly after and treated him with the little medicine they had. For the most part, this planet seemed hospitable, but it was already taking its toll on Ace. Glomus gave Ace the best treatment he could, but he wasn't doing well. It was another long day, and even though they made more progress, their morale was down and they were afraid for Ace. It hadn't even been 2 days since they crash landed and Ace was already fighting for his life. But they did everything they could for him, and all they could do now was wait and hope that he could pull through. They all had a long, dark night ahead of them. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Special thanks to all my friends who voiced characters in this video. 2 of these guys are great YouTubers that are really entertaining. Please consider checking out their channels, and if you like their content, help support their channel by subscribing to them. Their links are in the description below. And if you'd like to appear as a character in a future narrative series, please consider becoming a patron. I also want to shout out my newest patrons and YouTube member, Phantom12000, Flux, and Felipe Salto Mendes. Thank you so much for the support. And a big thanks to all of my patrons who are helping support the channel so that I can one day make this a full-time job and make more content like this much more regularly. Thanks guys, I really appreciate it. And as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, have a good one.